Jules, nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this. Denise, it's nice to see you again.
Yes, how are you doing, Pastor Frazier?
I'm all right. I'm just so grateful that you're going to do this for us. I wanted to give you a sort of a larger context that we were the first church in the Diocese of Los Angeles that actually had really a support group for gay and lesbian people. And so now I always tell the story that they had a meeting. I was told that they had a meeting they thought we should have a support group for gay and lesbian people and transgendered people. Well, not transgender then, but transgender now. And the first meeting had no one showed up. Nobody showed up. And flash forward to, a number of years later, and, two gay men run the place. And so, that's part of one of the reasons that was allowed to happen was because we stand on the shoulders of people like you, Jewel, who were, really, maybe you were running a nightclub. I think you were really running a church. You were building community for people and connection for people and family for people. And so that's the context. And so, I did have a question, Denise, if I could, if you could have talk to Jewel. I had one question because I'm a priest and a busybody. I noticed when I read some things about you that you grew up a Baptist. But one of the things that in my own life was not so much now for younger people, but for me as a 62-year-old, I grew up in the Roman Catholic Church and then was sort of jettisoned from that. And I was always interested in the spiritual path of gay and lesbian transgender people when they were told maybe there's no place for you in religion, and we had to seek our own healing. And I know that I read later on that you're part of a very vibrant church. And so I was wondering, what was that journey for you where you picked up your inheritance and said, well, actually, the good news of the gospel is mine?
Right. Well, I grew up in a Baptist church. And for me, as a kid, I saw it as the difference between high Baptist and low Baptist. My dad attended the low Baptist church where there was singing and shouting and praising and dancing. And my siblings and I went to the high Baptist church where there was not a lot of shouting, if any. And it was more like the African Methodist Episcopal Church. It was more like a Methodist church than the church that I attended, even though it was a Baptist church. And then when I moved away from home because of this strict, very Baptist religious kind of thing, I didn't want to go to church anymore and didn't go for
me neither.
For quite a while, even though while I was at the a kid 13, 14, they were suggesting that I might do or become a missionary, through the church afterwards. But I didn't see that. And I started to see what I consider too much hypocritical stuff going on. The church members, the minister, the secretary and his wife, and I said, this is not for me. And so I didn't go. Once I moved out of my parents' home, I didn't go to church at all. Moved to LA, and for years, like I said, I didn't attend except for weddings and funerals. And in the late 60s, when Reverend Troy Perry opened MCC, I attended there for a couple of times, but that didn't really feed my spirit either. So one more time, I was absent from organized religion for many years. And really until Reverend or Archbishop now Carl Bean came to the Catch, and they were without a church home, and they were just starting to organize.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, the catch was like a church. Well,
Yes.
it became a church.
Yes.
It was a meeting place for several months until we found a little theater that we could rent, and then we moved into that. And ultimately, we bought our own church, and and so and I didn't come out until I was 23 or 24. I mean, well, I didn't know I was a lesbian until then. It took much longer for me to come out.
Hmm.
Um, but I attended Unity Fellowship and was part of the early crew organizing, being that, and was even thought about maybe entering, the ministry at some time at a later date, but feeling going from the hell and damnation of everything that wasn't traditionally Baptist or Christian
Hmm.
to hearing that love was for everyone and
Right.
we were made in God's image,
Right.
um, and this was like music to my ears, especially since by then I hadn't come out to my parents and I hadn't come out to any of my siblings either. So to have this family of folks that accepted me just as I was, and I assumed kind of a leadership position there, as well as probably being the primary donor at that time for the church. And I stayed there for maybe 4 or 5 years, and then I moved on to um, it was United Spirit. So I started with United Spirit Religious Science Group,
Hmm.
and then when they broke up, I went through another period of not going to any kind of organized religious situation for many years after that. And it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago that one of my sisters had a stroke, and then dementia kind of set in with that. And she wanted to drive and still, and I said, well, no, I'll take you wherever you want to go. And she said, well, I want to go to church. I said, okay. I said, what church would you like to go to? And she said, I want to go to Agape. And this
Ah.
was what? Agape. Okay. I had been once before when one of my other sisters was getting her practitioner's license, but I hadn't been back since that time. And I found out that neither did she go there on any kind of regular basis. But she wanted to go. She said, I want to go to Agape. I said, okay, we'll do that. And once I went, it was the second time when I had found a home. The first time was at Unity Fellowship, and the second was with Agape. And the New Age suited me. It was like it was a mold. Uh, and she and then I would drop my sister off at West Angeles, which is a Pentecostal church.
Yes.
And then I would go back and pick her up. But I've never been ready for the Pentecostal bashing. And I know a lot of gays and lesbians that go there, but I went to church to feel my soul and
Right.
not be beat up. So, but she wanted to go there, and I promised her that I'd drop her off, and so that's pretty much it.
You found a home.
I did, and now I go well whenever they have it, but I tune in every Sunday anyway. Now that we can't meet, and I go to um, the devotion, Sunday devotional that's on Facebook that Ricky Beebe, who was head of the choir and the music at Agape, began having Sunday devotionals, and that was going really great. I really loved that, and then along came the virus. So
Right. Well, now we're all on live on Facebook like this. So
yeah. So I tune into that, and even though it's not the same, I'm still filled with
close.
the spirit of it. It's as close as I can get.
Right.
And
Well, while you're tooling around on Facebook, you're always welcome to tune into St. John's. We would love to have you come visit us on a regular basis. And so I'm going to turn this over to Denise. I know Denise has lots of questions for you and for the people who are watching the program. And so, Jewel, once again, we're so grateful for you giving us some of your time. And you are always welcome here. And we're very grateful for all that you have done for the community and all you continue to do, and for being with us today. So
thank you.
We're just here. We're here digitally, but I want to welcome you to St. John's. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to thank you for hosting this and thank Martha for inviting me to be a part of doing this interview. Jewel is someone that's near and dear to my heart, and she has, again, made a difference in my life. I'm not lesbian. That doesn't matter with her. She serves, as she'll say, bi, tri, and otherwise, whoever, it doesn't matter. So I'm so grateful. She's my shero, she's my mentor, and my spirit mom. So every time I hear her speak, I learn something. So I'm sure everybody's going to be excited to see what an amazing, heartfelt woman Jewel is. If you don't already know, her name suits her well. She is a jewel. So let's jump in, and just for you to talk to us about your early childhood development, your family and your siblings, your mom and your dad, and within that, your awareness of being lesbian and how the family dealt with that and the impact that it had on your life and the relationships with your family.
Well, my folks were both from Arkansas, and my dad was a sharecropper, and he picked cotton and did all of that. Then my mother's sister and her husband and their daughter had migrated to Chicago, and their daughter was the same age as my oldest brother, and she was going to what my dad termed a real school, not the little country schools that his kids had been in, and he wanted that for his kids. So the migration then for us was from Arkansas, for them rather. I was born in Gary, Indiana, which is where we ended up. When I was 4, I had a cousin and uncle that were drafted into the Navy during World War II, and they had been sent to be stationed in San Diego in order to be shipped out to Pearl Harbor, where they would do their time in the Navy. But when they got to San Diego, they said, "Whoa, Chicago, Gary, all of that. It's not really the promised land. The real promised land is here in California, Southern California in particular." So my family moved to San Diego when I was 4, and that's where I grew up. I did grammar school. We called it junior high school in those days. It's called middle school these days, and high school there. I was my place at school and in school had to do with also kind of helping people too. So I had one of my friends who was a little bit slow learning, but I helped her, and we were study buddies from time to time, and then I was popular in the sense that I was voted for president of my elementary school, my junior high school or middle school, and I was president of the girls in high school. After graduating from high school, I moved to Los Angeles in order to go to UCLA, and that's where I started my educational journey, which lasted for a whole bunch of years. And I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about those. When I went to UCLA, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any job. I did have a place to stay. My oldest brother, who had gone to pharmacy school at UC Berkeley and had to wait a year in order to start there because they didn't allow but one black in the pharmacy school at the time. But when he finished pharmacy school, he rented a house, and all my brothers and sisters, except Carol, the youngest one, lived in that house when they moved to LA. So, and I had a brother that was another brother that was already here, Party and Walt. He went to UCLA, and so I could ride to school and all of that with them. I didn't have to worry about a place to stay.
So that's pretty phenomenal to have a family that's going for higher education, because at that time that wasn't common in our community. You may have one person, but for you to have other people to come up behind is significant.
Yeah, well, there was 7 of us. I was number 5 of 7, and all 7 of us have a minimum of 2 years of college, and the rest of us either graduated from college with BAs. My brother had passed. He was in grad school when he was killed in an automobile accident. And then my oldest brother and I had advanced degrees, because I did go to school for acupuncture, and I got my master's in Oriental medicine.
And then also really unusual that you went back to school later in your life, and it took you so long to finish your BS. So that's pretty substantial.
Yeah, it took me 14 years. From 1957, I graduated in 1971.
Wow.
From LA with a BA in history, which was my love. Initially started in 57. I was going to follow in the footsteps of my brother, because at that time there were very limited occupations that Black folk could think about doing, and medicine has always been one, and then teaching, and then the other alternative was with the government, and most often the post office. So when I went back to school after 14 years of taking classes here and there and never giving up the dream of getting my degree, I finally got a job. Actually, I had to invent my own job. I opened a dress shop with my sister, and where I could set my own hours, because the jobs that I had before, you had rotating hours, and even though you might agree with the manager that he or she is going to allow you to keep that one shift, then it would always change. So I would have to start over again in another school sometimes if it was, too late to go to. Once I had a lot of schools that I attended and a lot of jobs that I did before I got to
How many jobs were those?
I haven't counted, but I do know that one year I turned in 18 W-2s.
Wow.
And in this whole process, I never drew unemployment.
Hmm.
I never did GR or any kind of welfare things. So
Wow.
I always made sure I had another job before I changed jobs. And one time I had 3 jobs in 1 week. So that was like top of the
What,
heap right there.
what motivated you to keep going? Because you started at one point and then you finished and then you went back in. What was your motivation?
My motivation came from when I was a child, and I knew that there were a couple of things that I thought would change the way that I felt, which was inferior and not enough, because this is what I heard, and this is what society had presented to me, being a dark-skinned Black person. Then there's only so far that you're going to go, and a woman too, or a girl child. And so it was like I thought to myself, and I kept these thoughts to myself, if I make enough money, then I can be and do and whatever I want to do. And so that was my goal, was to make money to stop the pain of feeling ostracized because of something that I could not change, i.e. the color of my skin and the nap of my hair. So it was on to UCLA. I graduated. I didn't tell anyone, no family, friends, or nothing. I was doing it for me because I could hear that chatter in the back about, you're not going to be anything. So, and I knew, as far as my dad was concerned, too, education was the key, and that was part of what it was for me, even though I pretty much knew then that I wasn't going to use my BA for anything, because I'd opened up my dress shop, and that freedom of being your own boss. Yeah, that was great. I wanted more.
So with studying and majoring history, had you thought about politics or social activism? What was the reason for the history? Just your interest, or was it that in you, that activism? Because everything you've done that I've seen has been activism for the community.
To be perfectly honest with you, what I did was look at the curriculum and see what I could graduate with the quickest. So, and then I even thought about teaching, but then the whole system changed in education for younger people, and no longer, could the principal be in charge. Like when I was in grammar school, the principal had a paddle, and then here I'm reading that this teacher was thrown out the window and the car was overturned, and the teacher couldn't say anything to the kids, and let alone paddle them. And so that was when I wrote off this teaching desire. And then it was having, I think, built in, especially for women in my generation and earlier generations, my mom and whatever, is that caretaking. I started off being a surrogate mom basically at 7, 8 years old to my baby sister, and her, dressed for school and that sort of thing, taking care of her virtually from the time I was like 7 years old. So, that and having a mom and grandmother that were into making sure that not only our family, our immediate family, but the extended families, we always helped each other like that. And the neighborhood was such that if somebody had needs, then they would call. This one lady that was single had her son, had a son, and she would call my dad whenever she needed him to talk to her son, have these, man-to-man conversations, or man-to-boy conversations. So I saw it around me, and I think this is basically, in those days, was the nature of Black people. We always spoke to, even if they were strangers.
So it was just a communal feel anyway. We just gathered together, and we were just community without,
Right. We had plenty of aunties and uncles that were friends of our real aunts and uncles.
That extended family.
Yes. So, and we looked after each other. We took care of each other.
So with the climate of things now, in terms of your political and social justice activism, what would your core be? What would you say to the young people that are out there now protesting? What would your core look like?
I love the way that some the African tribes treat that, and that is that when the elders are lost, the adults are lost, and when the adults are lost, the youth are lost. So I feel that as an elder, my role is to pass on as much as I can, as much knowledge as I can give to whomever I come in contact with. But I have, since I didn't have any biological children, I have you and a couple of 2 or 3 other folks that are adults, and I love you all, and I want you to have whatever it is that I have to give to you. And one of the big things is being available. Just being available for helping, for answering the questions. There was a fellow called me this morning, and he was telling the same story over and over that he's told me before. And I said, look, get off the pity pot. If you want something done, don't expect other people to do it for you. Don't expect the system to do it for you. You have to go out there and make it happen yourself.
And you've been an example of that with, forming Rue's House, the Catch the Village. So if you can talk a little bit about all of the businesses and enterprises that you've done, that you've been the example. And that's what I've seen, is that you walk your walk and you talk your talk.
Right. Well, first of all, one can never do anything alone, pretty much. Yeah, well, I'll take that back. You can do a bunch of stuff alone, but it's always helpful when you have other folks that can help you along, even if it's just a kind word or whatever. So starting with the businesses, my first business was a dress shop, a boutique, we called them. And I had that for 2 or 3 years, and my sister Carol and I had gone into together to get that started, and then she went about her life, and so I had the dress shop. So that was my first entrepreneurial enterprise that I took on for myself. And during the 70s, there was a recession. Women, especially Black women, would stop buying clothes for themselves and start doing their own hair and those sort of things. So I was looking for a business that would not be affected by the
sort of
economy going down. Right, recession proof. Thank you. And one of my brothers owned a liquor store, and so I was talking to him, and he said, "Well, why don't you get a liquor store?" He said, "People are going to drink." He said they might just buy half pints instead of 50, but they're going to buy something, you know. But that was too impersonal for me to deal with that. But it did put the idea and again in my brain, because I had thought about it earlier, because there weren't any lesbian and gay clubs around then that I knew of. And I had thought about it before, but then that passed away. And then it dawned on me, hey, you know, nightclub would be okay. But there's, I couldn't do that liquor store thing. It was a bit much for me. And so one of the places that I had worked for was at a grocery store, and it was right across the street from what would become the Catch. It was called the Diana's Club then. And I looked in the paper, in the newspaper under business headings, saw this place, and I said, I wonder if it's that club that was right across the street from the grocery store that I worked at that wouldn't allow Black folk to come in. And so I jumped in my car and I drove past, and now looking for a for sale sign, didn't see anything, came back, and I got the next day's Times business section, and I looked at the business thing, and I saw this address on Pico, but it seemed like it was down the street, should have been down the street from where the Diana's ballroom and Diana's Club was. So I jumped in the car and drove back, because I had been out looking at a place on Western and 8th Street. Drove back, and I said, "That's it. That's the club." That these folks that came to the store said they couldn't drink there and that. And I went back. Needless to say, I didn't even sleep that night. You know, it was like I just stayed up, and at 7 o'clock I was there, and found out that they actually opened at 6, because it was just a handful of elderly white folks that drank there all day long, and they closed early in the evening and went home. So when I found out that, I just walked in, and they said, you know, that the owner would be in a couple hours or so. So I sort of kind of waited around, went back to my dress shop, and came back up there and asked if it was still available. She said, yeah. And she said, it's 18,000. And that 18,000 was just for the business alone. And I still would have to pay rent for the club itself. So I did a few things. I didn't have that kind of money. And I had the liquor posting sign was for 30 days. And I said to myself, go out and do what you can. So I raised part of my head, about 8,000 or so. But Carol's ex-husband, my sister Carol's ex-husband, was the manager of a bank. And it would take too long for me to do the SBA thing and get back for this 30 days. But he said that would be the only way that he could help me, was to do a SBA loan. And so I filled out all the paperwork. When it hadn't come through at the end of the 25th day, I went back to him and I said, you know, you got to help me out. I said, just make me a personal loan, and then when the monies come from SBA, I'll be able to pay the bank off. Well, I didn't know that he was doing something that he wasn't supposed to do. That would cost him his job, but he was okay. He's still okay. So anyway, I had to make a beeline down to ABC because he couldn't get the loan passed for a few days from through his bank. And I got another sign with an update on it, another posting, that instead of that 30 days ending, I took that sign down and put another one in. Fortunately, the bartender was a drunk. So I just told him, I said, look, and I said, I have to go in and straighten out the sign because it's peeling off. And then I just exchanged the sign that was in the window for the one the new one. And so at the end of that 30 days, I had the money, all the money intact. And and I became a nightclub owner then.
Wow.
And after doing that, eventually the building became available, and the upstairs, the ballroom, of course, was part of that sale. So I was able then to buy the building, which included what would become the Catch One. And that's pretty much it. But in between those times where you had asked me about the jobs, I was a probation attendant. So I worked at Los Palmas School for Girls. And I left there to become a deputy sheriff for all of 2 months because they assigned me to Civil Brand, which was out in San Pedro then. And my idea of being a deputy sheriff was kicking in doors and going in and, arresting folk and all that. But instead, I was on the other end of that. I got them after they were arrested. And too many of them were older women that were common drunks, which they arrested you for during those days. Now it's homeless, but then you got arrested. If you didn't have a place to stay and you were drunk, then you got arrested. You got a 30-day term. Or it was either them or prostitutes or, one or two other people that might have done some little bit more serious thing. But a lot of them were older women, and I could only last 2 months there, going in and telling them that they had to, get up now and go eat, and you shouldn't do this, and you're going to be put on punishment for that, and these, I was in my early 20s, 22 or whatever, and I'm talking to older women. And
so it seems like this went against your moral fiber, or what you knew, and having been raised in a community and everything. So
yeah, with the respect for elders and that, couldn't do it.
Right. Wow. So for those that don't know and haven't seen the documentary on Netflix, Jules Catch One, they have to see it so they can see the full story and get to appreciate all that the Catch was and is to the community, because it's just legendary, and it always will be that. My vision is that the sign, your first sign will be at the museum in Washington. So that's my vision.
Oh, really?
That sign.
Oh. Wow, that's big.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you had the Catch, and you didn't talk any about Rue's House, which was impactful for the community when the virus, HIV and AIDS virus, as well as the Village Health Foundation, as well as the Vegan Village Cafe. So if you can talk a little about that.
Oh, sure, for sure. I have a fabulous spouse, wife, and she wanted to help community-based. In fact, I met her at Unity Fellowship of Christ Church, and it was like love at first sight, even though, we acted like it wasn't, but we never parted too much after the first meeting, okay? And it's
still going strong after how many years? Still going strong.
31. Yes. And so she wanted to be a part of helping the community too. And this was during the AIDS crisis, and there was no place that had in the whole country that had a space for women where they could keep their children with them. Usually once the women became diagnosed, then their kids would go, if they didn't have a relative or something to take care of them, then they would go into the system then. And Rue didn't want that. I didn't want that to happen. So that's why she opened, and with my support, the Rue's house, and it was there for about 8 or 9 years, and then the protease inhibitors became a way of extending the life of people with HIV/AIDS. And so at the time that she closed it, it was like one transgender lady there, and that was it. And we knew that we had done what we needed to do around that.
And to tell and to just let everybody know about Full Circle, there was a baby that was in the house that ended up being in school with my sons.
Right.
My son's 30 something now, so it just shows you that work and how Full Cycle. This young girl wanted to just finish high school. Her grandmother was raising her. Her mom and dad had both died from the virus, and she was one of the students that was attended the school. She did finish high school before she passed on. So it
Right.
just
Within a couple of months. So that was great work. Being culminated into, she got her wish.
Yes.
In fact, so.
But to see your efforts from that even went on to another generation and got to be experienced in the intersection with my family in that. So so thank you.
Yeah, and here we are. And no, thank you, because
Yeah.
you the joy, and not only that, supported the things that we've done together and independent of each other from our first meeting. So it worked.
Yes. And my favorite, the Village Health Foundation, and where we've done most of our work together, the catch was before my time. But another synchronicity is I lived in the neighborhood. So I'm sure our paths crossed at some point. I live right over in Serrano in Koreatown.
Right up.
Village Health Foundation in the Vegan Village Cafe, which I know you're going to be working on that book, that cookbook, that recipe book. So I'm going to throw that out there. So if you could talk about those two ventures as well, because a lot of people don't realize that all of those recipes were yours. So,
sure. Well, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is too that I had another catch one in Houston at the same time that I had the catch one here for a couple of years, and then with the AIDS crisis and the oil embargo that shut down the Southwest, that was booming and made Houston and other towns pretty much go bankrupt for a while. Then I was able to connect with another town where I had a burger joint called it Mom's Big Burger, because I figured that having the burger joint and also owning this gay club in the South, that they wouldn't get too angry with Mom. So I was able to survive that for a couple of years.
A little creativity there.
Yeah. So and then I had Catch a Burger too, which was right across the street from the Catch after I got back from Houston, and then later was the Vegan Village. I've been vegan for over 30 years now, and so I wanted to have a place where they had good food, soul food, like most of us are used to growing up on, the greens and the yams, and then we had pho or imitation shrimp, fried shrimp, and hot wings, and all of that kind of stuff, and the best cornbread. I don't usually brag about my cooking,
Yes.
but the very best cornbread. available anywhere. So yeah, a cookbook would be something that will be on the agenda for the future too, along with several other things that.
Yeah. Yes. So
So
then,
then it was
move.
to the clinic.
Yes.
Yeah, we at one time I was doing the vegan village, the club, and the clinic, and I did those three things for a couple of years actually, before I had to let something go, and so the restaurant is really long and hard work, and I couldn't get anybody. I was willing to give it away, recipes, the whole 9 yards, and I never could find anybody to do that. So I ended up closing it. And we did, the catch. We had AA meetings there. We had adult children of alcoholics there. We had black and white men together. We had
Yoga class, Zumba class.
yes, a lot of things. So anyway, after going to acupuncture school at age 56, starting it, finishing when I was 60, I gave myself a graduation combination birthday present by going to the WNBA fantasy camp. So yeah, and from the time I was a kid, I was tomboyish, so I could play ball, and my brothers would always call me out for their teams, whether it was football, baseball, whatever. But I didn't know that I was a lesbian then. I didn't find that out until I was in my mid-20s, when I knew absolutely then that this was one of the issues that was disturbing me that I couldn't put my finger on. So anyway, I got to the fantasy camp, and the coach asked me how old I was. I was 60 at the time, and there were all these young kids trying out for the pro teams and that. And here's this old girl out there trying to run up and down the court with them. But they fixed it so that my team would win. They don't know that I know that they fixed it, but they fixed it so my team would win. So we were the champions for the year, and I got the trophy for being the most inspirational.
Oh, great!
And the coach told me, she said, "You're older than my mother." I said, really? She said, "Yeah, and all my mother does is cook and watch TV." And I said, "Well, no, that's never been me." Oh, and a word about the politics too. You'd ask about, the political thing. I wanted to be out there with hands on, and I couldn't see myself sitting, in the room. And there's a lot of folks that do it well, like Maxine Waters, my dear friend. Yeah, she does it better than anybody. But I didn't see that at the time. What I saw was people downtown in City Hall, or if they were in Washington, sitting in these big rooms and kind of dozing off after time, And I wanted to be hands-on and right with the community and be in the community, outside, looking in, and so that's why I passed up on the politics, even though for those off election years and local offices like the city council and that, during those days, I had more people coming to the catch than was voting then. So if I had wanted to be city council person, I could have been that, I know. Sure. So, but I chose.
You had mentioned it a few times, but I'm sure Rue had a lot to do with why that didn't come to fruition, adding another thing on your already full plate.
Well, no, actually, like I said, I really didn't. I wanted to be out there with the people and doing stuff hands-on and helping with what I knew would be beneficial to folks without having to sit up and go through a whole bunch of proposals and propositions before you can get a bill passed and all of that. You know, I wanted to help, and I wanted to do it hands-on, and I wanted to make an immediate impact on whatever the situation was.
And there's so many people that testify and do testimonies of you actually doing that, because I think you didn't mention, you were missed to mention that the clinic was based on payment through donation, where you could come with whatever, a loaf of bread, a couple lemons, and that was the model. So providing for the community over 15 years services, and you're still providing. So
it's been 20.
wow.
And the method payment has changed. We have insurance now for folk, and unfortunately, what I found out in those days, when I would have it based on whatever you wanted to give, not many people were giving then, you know. So I had to change up, but I still kept it affordable and still made exceptions to even affordable.
And then even with that, a lot of your wealth was used to supplement that.
Oh,
so
without a doubt.
to even continue on with that for the community, and you had all that you had already done, and to still continually keep giving and giving and giving. So in that, you as a leader and an elder in the LGBTQ community and all communities, if we can just put it all in a nutshell, what would your final words be for others that are coming up behind you? Because I know I've heard you talk and instilled in me to be more a giver than a taker, and how I do that, and how you've done it well, and really mentored and showed me the way, and so many others that we can go on and on about what you have done and continue to do at 81 plus. Yeah, it's hard for me to say that. Yes.
It's hard for me to feel it, and I don't, which is the reason why I can keep going, I guess. But yeah, I think the primary reason why I'm still going and will until hopefully until my last breath, and hopefully that's not for another 20, 30 years, but just grateful to the life that I was given and all that I was given, and knowing that I could not have done it alone. In fact, I used to always say we, and folks would say, "Oh, you have a husband?" Or you got, no, we as in God and me were moving this thing. And I knew without the blessings of God, and I try to be and stay on the path and listen to my inner voice, listen to the God in me that has led me, this far and further. And I know that by doing, by helping, by being available, that's where I get my joy.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for being able to serve. I'm grateful for being blessed with the health and energy and thoughts and whatever it took for me to get to this point and beyond.
And you did touch a little, Jewel, on, and just before we close up, because I know this is key to who you are now, your sobriety, and you really finding a good source for your mental health. And right now, mental health is a real big feature now with a lot of people in our community. There's stigmas. So we can just wrap up with that, so you can really send a message for people to get help, and what and how you were supported in that way.
Right. The 12-step program was my first venture into self-help. And through that, I learned how to be honest and sincere with whatever it was and whomever it was that I did. I made amends so that all that back stuff was washed away. And when you make amends, you do it with the folks that you need to apologize to or give money back to or whatever the situation was. So yes, the 12-step program was a really, really big thing for me. And out of that came the biggest, oh man, the biggest thing for me is that I met my mentor, teacher, friend, Dr. Donald Kilhefner, who is a youngin psychologist, and he's 82 and he's still working, doing the work.
Mhm.
And so there's no way that I'll let him outdo me as far as still doing something in the community for as long as I'm here. And I just, like I said, I'm a blessed soul because I didn't have to end up here like this, and I'm grateful.
So, Joel, I'll say thank you to Martha for inviting me to be a part of this. Thank you for Dr. Dan hosting this, and just in gratitude for all that you do, all that you've done, and all that you're yet to do. And I'm not going to say that too loud around Rue because she is instrumental in your life and supporting you in all that you do, which
That's
is
right.
so important in our lives.
Always, she's always been there during this the whole 31 years or so. And I want to thank.
So we say thank you, Rue,
and,
for sharing. Thank you, Rue, for sharing Jewel with the world. Yes.
and thank you, Denise, for being my spirit child. And I can see that you as an elder, you'll be fabulous too. And Martha, you're already fabulous
Yeah.
as an elder. I guess I can say that. But Martha's been great, and meeting the pastor for the first time today, I could feel his warmth and caring for the community too. So I'm like I said, a blessed soul, and it makes me happy, brings me joy.
Thank you.